Shalom, truth seekers. So lately I realize that I have an older video on my channel that I've been getting some comments on lately, and I've needed to make an update to this video. It was a video I did, I guess, a few years ago about the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath. And recently, the thing that's been on my heart lately is someone reached out to me recently, and it's not just them specifically, but I've heard others as well, who are questioning which day the seventh-day Sabbath or the weekly Sabbath falls on. And there are different streams of thought with this. I think three of them are: one, that the Sabbath has just been lost somewhere through the course of history. Two, the Sabbath changes, like a lunar Sabbath, essentially, if you've ever heard of that. Like they make the Sabbath to match the phases of the moon. Or the solar Sabbath, which is like the lunar Sabbath, except they make the Sabbath line up with falling a certain number of days from the so-called spring equinox, the beginning of the year, and they take that from the creation account where the sun, the moon, and the stars were created on day 4, and then you count a certain number of days and it was Sabbath. So anyway, this video, I recommend, like, this comment discussion that you see here is kind of the one that prompted me to make this video. I just realized, this video, it's been on my to-do list to update it, but it is out of date, and this was made back in the time when people like Jerry Morris and others were making claims that they had confirmed with a sundial that there were 364 days in the solar year. And when I heard that claim, I realized it was extraordinary, and from that time on, I was making very diligent efforts to test and prove that claim. But I made this video, but it takes a while to test and prove that claim, like years to test, because, it takes a whole year to watch to see what the sun's doing. But so I made this video it kind of at the beginning of my testing process, and I was kind of just going off of what everyone else said. But over the course of time, I finally was able to test and prove it myself, and discovered the claim is inaccurate, and it seems modern science is actually more accurate in its claim of approximately 365.24-ish days in the solar year. And I don't think that's a contradiction with things like Enoch. There's so much more to talk about, like Enoch's 364. I just recommend translation work needs to be done. Consistency and accuracy in translation, and you have to realize Enoch says 364 stations versus 364 days. Positions of the sun shifting north-south, 364 positions of the sun make a year. But he also says that the sun renders extra service on the seasonal days, and men will be in error because of they're not understanding this. So, another topic for another time. But anyway, so the 365.24-ish days seems to be the reality, and whether or not it's always been the reality, that doesn't, it's irrelevant. The point is, Genesis 1:14 does say he put the lights in the heavens 4 times, and he would have to say something else if he intended that to change. So, it's just like the people who try to say legalism and lawlessness in the New Testament and take the writings of Paul to support it. Like Yeshua said, not one jot or tittle would pass until heaven and earth pass, an event spoken about in Revelation. So, and I'm looking for a cancellation of the instruction like that. And I don't see that for as far as Genesis 1:14 is concerned. Those lights are still moving exactly how the Creator intends them to move. Whatever they're doing, that is time for us. So a lot to get into there. But anyway, and I think there is a possibility. I'm definitely open to searching things out more and testing what people want to bring forward. But I definitely see that there is a possibility that nothing has changed, like the stories of the sun standing still and the sundial going backwards. These things may have simply just happened, and the luminaries may have just simply continued to operate as they have always done. I see that possibility. Anyway, another talk for another time, but regardless, it is interesting that we currently seem to have 365.24-ish days in the solar year. So what happens is those people who say that the Sabbath, they want to try and count days from the beginning of spring, the so-called spring equinox, the beginning of the solar year. They want to try and match the creation account, and they want to count a certain number of days after that event. What ends up happening is the solar year takes 365.24 days to complete. And there's a fraction of a day, and that's important. It's 0.24 of a day. So in 4 years, you're going to end up with this so-called leap year or whatever. But the people who are trying to count the weekly Sabbath a certain number of days from the beginning of spring are going to have to make an adjustment for this extra day once every 4 years. They're going to end up having, instead of 6 days between Sabbath days, they're going to end up having 7 days. Every 4 years, they're going to end up having 7 days between Sabbath days, weekly Sabbath days. And the lunar Sabbaths are kind of the same, I think. It's been a while since I've heard about the lunar Sabbath, but I mean, instead of it happening once every year, they are potentially doing it many, many times every year, like approximately 12 or 13 times a year. They're trying to match the lunar cycle, so they're always rounding left or right and picking up a day, some weeks having a little more, a little less than 6 days a week. And so, in between Sabbaths. And so recently I had a sister, truth seeker, reach out and have a discussion about this. And she mentioned some things, and it just reminded me this video was out of date. And so I wanted to touch on a couple things she said. But this is not just to address what she said. Like I said, I've heard this from several other big, YouTube channels that are passionate about the calendar. And so I just think this is a topic that is good to discuss and to have iron sharpening iron. So I'm going to put this out there for those who are doing truth-seeking on this topic. So I wanted to address these concepts of the Sabbath, either the lunar Sabbath or the solar Sabbath. And as far as the Sabbath being lost over the history of time, I'm open to that possibility. Feel free to discuss it or share your research, but I just haven't seen anything compelling to convince me yet that the Sabbath has actually been lost. But I'm open to more study on that if someone wants to try and share information on that. But I do want to address these solar Sabbaths and the lunar Sabbaths, because I think it is a concern. And like I said, not just this one truth seeker who reached out to me recently, but entire other channels are pumping this strongly. And I've had private conversations with some of the people running these channels, but the time, it doesn't seem like it ever gets past that individual, and yet the information is still being presented to the audience, on this. So I think it's important to, if they're not going to mention it, I'm going to go ahead and mention it for whatever it's worth. Iron sharpening iron in love and humility. So come, let us reason together. So what is being suggested to me is that there is no instruction that tells us that the Sabbath day is a perpetual cycle. That's what was told me recently. They tried to tell me that there's no instruction for the Sabbath to be perpetual, and I think it said independent of like feast days specifically, but perpetual in and of itself on a 7-day cycle. That is an important point, because with the solar Sabbaths and the lunar Sabbaths, it isn't perpetual. Every now and again, every 4 years for the solar Sabbath, you're going to end up with 7 days instead of 6 days between your Sabbath days. And for the lunar, it's going to be much more frequent. So I wanted to address that claim, two main claims, and that first one was is there an instruction that says that the Sabbath day needs to happen every seventh day? And I just don't understand why these brothers and sisters aren't seeing this. But unless I'm missing something in the translation, I think there are definitely many instructions that tell us about the seventh day Sabbath cycle, and you have to look for the phrase 6 days. I think is what you need to look for. If you're looking for 7 days, you might not see it, but if you search for 6 days, you will see it all over the place. And let's see, I wanted to start with, I think I mentioned in this comment somewhere, yeah, Exodus 8:11. So I just, in eSword here, I searched for 6 days, and you can see all the references to 6 days. And if you want to see more instructions talking about the 6 days between Sabbath days, check it out. But this is the next one I want to come to too. But I mean, essentially, here it is right here, Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days, yeah. So, and this is verse 9. So I think this is where the 10 Commandments were given initially. And the instruction is there. Brothers and sisters, it is right there. Like, 6 days, excuse me, shalt thou labor and do all thy work. And I don't have the next verse here because it's pulling up in the search. I don't want to go because I'll lose my place, but you can go and see. But then, it goes on a verse later to remind us that this pattern is, it's to remind us of what the Creator did. Like, he worked 6 days and he rested on the 7th, and that is, as we're going to see here, a perpetual covenant. That's a constant reminder of what he did at the creation event. And he blessed and he hallowed and sanctified the 7th day. And unless you are going to add to or take away from this instruction, I don't see any justification or any way to escape this. The Creator didn't say in 6 days thou shalt do your labor until the solar year is over. Then until 4 solar years are over. And then you have to add an extra 7th day. Or in the case of lunar Sabbaths, well, you have to work 6 days between your Sabbaths until the switch of the month. Then you have to go forward or backwards to match the phase of the month, the moon. We don't see those kinds of instructions. Please show me if I'm missing it. But all I see is 6 days, with no exception, no adding to and no taking away. And the other thing that was mentioned to me later was they said there is no perpetual instruction that says for 6 days shall you labor and 7, that the Sabbath had to be every 7th day. But there is, and that's what the second verse is here. And I mean, there might be something going on with the translation, but I mean, for whatever it's worth, this is talking about the Sabbath. I mean, and it's a big deal. Like, it is a big deal. I think, there are verses, I'll have to look at if this is the verse. I'm going to search for the word token. But the Sabbath is a very big deal. It's like one of those deals that is mentioned as like one of the signs or the mark of the Creator. Like, yeah, here. Well, I don't know which one it is. This might be talking about the Sabbath days associated with the high days of unleavened bread. But I know somewhere that there is when it's talking about the 7th day Sabbath, it talks about it being a token, and it talks in the same language that it uses here, frontlets between your eyes, and a sign upon thine hand, a token. That's the way it talks about the Sabbath. I just can't find which verse that was, but it's a big deal, and it is special, and and it is perpetual. You read these verses here, it is perpetual. And just the fact that the solar cycle is 365.24 days, because it has that extra 0.24 days, that is proof that the Sabbath has to be a different cycle. than the year. And I don't see a contradiction with that. I believe in counting days when the Creator said to count days, and I believe in looking for signs of the times when the Creator said to look for signs of the times. So here in these verses, he's telling us to count 6 days. In other verses, he says the 14th day of the first month, or the 15th day, or count 5 weeks, or 7 weeks, 49 days, 50 days. You know, specifically, I don't look to add to or take away from the instructions of the Almighty, and I think we need to be careful. So I don't, for example, I don't believe in counting anything that he said not to count. So for those who would like to just count to get to the first day of the 7th month, like I think we need luminary signs to confirm the first day of the 7th month. Another topic for another time. But like, yeah, I believe in counting 6 days between Sabbaths, because I see many instructions to do that. I believe in counting 14 days to Passover from the first day of the year, and all of this stuff. But I don't see a contradiction in the fact that the Sabbath appears to be a separate cycle than the holy days. Like, and even in Leviticus 23, they are introduced differently. Speak unto those things concerning Shuka, blah, 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 blah. So here, these first 2 verses are about the 7th day Sabbath. And then he goes on to start talking about the feast days, the other holy days in the year. And so there's a separation here, and he's giving you the instructions. There it is, 6 days, and on the 7th, boom, 1 verse telling you how to keep the Sabbath. And it doesn't say, by the way, every 4 years you're going to have a 7th day between your Sabbaths, so it'll be every 8 days for some years. Or if you're doing the lunar, you know, it doesn't say any more, any less. This is it, 6 days. So again, like I said, I'm open to the possibility that we've lost track of the Sabbath over all these thousands of years. I just haven't heard anything compelling enough to convince me that that is the case, but I'm open to it. But I mean, as far as I can see, though, I don't think there's room for these solar Sabbaths or these lunar Sabbaths. It's a nice thought that the year starts and we're matching the creation event, and then we count so many days to the Sabbath. But that is as far as that goes, I think. It is only a nice thought, a convenient thought, a logical thought of man. There is a way that seems right unto a man, but it just because it gives us warm fuzzies or it looks nice doesn't mean it's truth. Like, we have to make sure we're lining up with truth, and not just nice thoughts. And so I don't see any way around 6 days work shall be done. I don't see an exception to have more or less than that at the transitions of months or years. So yeah, I just wanted to make a quick video to update my previous video on that, because I was in this truth-seeking journey. It is a journey, perhaps a never-ending journey. And I was learning things 3 years ago and testing things, and that video I put out 3 years ago did need to be updated. So this is the update. This is where I'm currently at. Don't know if that'll be where I'll be at in the future, but this is where I am now, and I just wanted to share that. And I look forward to hearing loving iron sharpening iron discussion on this, if anyone has anything they'd like to contribute. So, shalom, and may Abba bless you as you continually seek his truths in love with a pure heart.